So you got this really cool script that does all the awesome things that you have programmed it to do. However, the only caveat is you have these hard-coded values, right? And you want this script to be used in multiple places. And to do that, you're like, oh, I need to, accept arguments in from the command line. Well, how do I go about doing that? Today, that's the question we're going to tackle. So let's hop right in and start coding. All right, so to read in command line arguments, I'm going to show you two essentially libraries that you need to do so. Now, are several more, and I'll probably make more videos on these other ones that are out there because they allow a little bit more of different things that you can do that are, I think, in my opinion, a lot more helpful. But the two packages that we're going to use are going to be the OS module, so import OS, and import sys. Now, I've kind of been confused about, or as I've gone through my programming journey, I've always relied on using OS versus sys, and it's probably because I read something a long time ago that said OS, you should probably prefer to use OS. But I want to take the time to say, if you aren't sure about things, go read the documentation on them, right? So if I went over here and I pulled up the documentation on system and OS, right? OS is the package that is for basically miscellaneous operating system interfaces. So it's a module we're basically providing a portable way to using operating system dependent functionalities, right? Whereas the system module is a module that provides access to some variables used to maintained by or interpret to the functions that interact strongly with the interpreter. This is always available. Now, the difference between these two is that I found, and this is probably why I always use more of OS than just straight up sys, is due to the fact that I can come in here and I can say os.sys. And now that opens up basically me using the same stuff that's within here. Now, that's kind of what I do, but I'm going to show you how to do this in both ways with both OS and system. So let's start talking about OS first, and then we'll go back and talk about sys. All right, so if we're going to use the OS package first, essentially to grab the command line arguments, all you need to do is I'm just going to make a variable that says args is equal to, and then we're going to do os.sys.argv. Now what this will do is if I go ahead and print this out, we'll do our f string technique, args is equal to. This should basically give us a list of all of the arguments that we passed in. So let's look at and see. So if I pass in, say, just give it our script name, with no trying to use this as a module or whatnot. If we just use this as this way, python.how to take arguments for a command line, and we run that, you're going to see that args is going to be, the first argument is going to be the script name. So it basically gets rid of this Python, right? It doesn't show that. Now, if I run this again and I say, so eventually we want to replace name with something that we want a name to pass in. So I'm going to say Jim, right? Now you see that args is now just the next string. All these arguments come as a string. So I could even then say space 10, and now you'll see that there's the script name, there's our first argument, there is the second argument, and you can see that the value of 10 came in as a string. So that's important to know, because if you're working with numbers and stuff like that, you always need to convert them you'll need to convert them essentially to whatever format you want it in, whether it's an int or a float or whatnot. So, and you can see that to accept these arguments, I am doing a space and then giving the argument. Well, what happens now if we go in here and we say, so arg1 is going to be equal to args of 0. So this should be our script name, right? And then arg2 is going to be equal args of 1, because we're going by index, right? Because it's a list. And this should be first arg, right? And then so on and so forth. And then we know in this case we're going to have 3 arguments. So we'll do this. So this will be arg1 and arg2, right? So now if I run this and we print these out, arg1, 2, and arg3, right? So, and I should change this, right, to make this more sense. Script name, and then arg1, arg2, right? Because that's really what it is, based on the comment that I did. And this 1, and this is 2. So if I run this, what you should see is we have our script name, which tells us that's the name of the script. We have the arg1. Oh, and I didn't change the index here, so this is going to be 2. So if we run this again, we'll see that we have our script name, arg1 is Jim, arg2 is 10, and then we have basically the name that we're going to do. Now, if we wanted to then use these arguments, all we essentially have to do is we could just say name is going to be equal to arg1. And then if we want to do something else, like age is equal to arg2. Hey Jim, or hey name, you are, and then we'll say age years old, right? So if I run this, we get the script, the first argument, then we get their string, hey Jim, you are 10 years old, right? So let's go back and let's add that case digital as our argument. Let's see what happens there, right? So if I do case digital, right, and then hit enter, you're gonna see that the space caused the name to be separated and not be essentially by itself. So we get an incorrect formatted thing of saying, hey case, you are digital years old, right? That doesn't work. How do we fix that? So to fix that, essentially all you need to do, if you want a longer phrase to be one argument, you can just do quotes and then quote, and then just like that, I put quotes around case digital, and then this should make it so case digital becomes one argument, and then we get our correct saying of hello case digital, you are 10 years old. We'll just say 30 and so on and so forth. Like you can change things up, you can add more arguments. But depending on how you use them, like they won't show up in what we got out, but they'll show up in our argv or our argv list that we got out. So just like that, that's how you use the OS module to essentially get your arguments. All right, so that's how we use OS module. Now to use the sys module, it's literally the same thing other than the fact that we're just going to do something like this, sys.argv. Now, a lot of times when you're like based off that documentation, like this will always be available. This should always be there for you. So I think a lot of times people, when they're looking to get command line arguments, they're going straight with like just import sys and then just use sys.argv. Now, if I run this should actually give me the exact same thing. And there you go, it does. And it's just because it works the same way. Essentially, it appears that like the OS module is basically able to call out to the internal Python module of sys and then just basically use it as it is. Now, the OS module just brings some extra things like it mentioned. It's portable for operating system dependent stuff. And whereas the sys module will always be there, it should always kind of work. So depending on your use cases, sometimes it might be better to use sys versus OS. But in the sense of getting arguments from the command line, you can use them the same way. The only difference is for OS, you have to actually call into the sys. So maybe for this, it's the best way to do this is using just straight up sys.argv. So let me know if you have any thoughts or questions, and if you have any better ways of which one you prefer, or if you have a reasoning why people may say use sys over OS in this case more. Let me know. I'd love to learn more with you, because again, I'm just providing you the things that I'm learning on my programming journey and the things that I have learned on my programming journey to help make things better for you. So this is a community that I would like to help make everybody better, so including myself. So if you find things, I would love to learn along with you. But in essence, this is the way that you can accept basic command line arguments or basic arguments from the command line in Python. In a later video, I'll talk about things that you can use in different modules that may be better, because what happens if you want to do something like, I want to say, I want to use something like dash name, and then case digital, and then dash age, and then it's 30, and then whatever. If I run this, you'll see that those come in as an arguments, and then now my first args just says, hello dash name, you are case digital years old, right? So there's things that you can basically name specific parameters, and we'll get that in a later video, because in this video, we're just talking about how you can accept them in and do basic stuff with them. So until next time, keep on programming.